Jesus was the Messiah. He was born into a Jewish family miraculously, as we all know, and he was certainly circumcised on the eighth day and so on. But he's the minister of the new covenant. I need to repeat that. Jesus was the founder and minister, instigator of the new, which is not the same as the old covenant. And we find that idea developing in his ministry. And the three things that I'll mention that are quite specific. Somebody asked him about divorce, and they quoted a text in Deuteronomy where Moses said, you can have a divorce for whatever that reason was. It isn't entirely clear to us today what that might be. It doesn't matter, because Jesus said, very words of Jesus here, Moses allowed you, permitted you to divorce your wives because of your hard heart. Note that, because you were very hard-hearted. But from the beginning in Genesis, it was not that way. Now I'm going to tell you, and here's the new covenant coming, brand new, shocking words overriding that particular aspect of Moses' teaching. I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, except for fornication, which would be adultery, breaking the law of marriage, of course, and marry somebody else, commits adultery. So there is an exception, but that exception is not, I repeat, not the exception that Moses allowed. So Jesus has changed Moses, gone beyond Moses there, actually cancelled Moses, and given his own answer. Of course, he's against divorce, but Paul and Jesus allowed for divorce where you have an unbelieving partner who decides to leave and not stay. Then that remaining half of the marriage is free to remarry under those limited conditions. That's not sort of free and easy divorce, nothing like that at all. So that's the first point. The second would be the food laws. He said it doesn't matter. The food laws are obviously of no consequence. Verse 19, the food does not enter his heart or mind, only into his stomach, then goes out into the sewer, into the latrine. This means that Jesus cleansed all foods. That should be clear. Paul then backs that up entirely in Romans 14, verses 14 and 20, where Paul says, I'm convinced in Messiah as a Christian. Paul was a Jew. He was convinced as a Christian that nothing is unclean of itself. And in the 20th verse of that 14th chapter of Romans, so it's Romans chapter 14, verses 14 and 20, 20th verse, he says, nothing is unclean. That should be convincing. Now, if it's your preference and you're sensitive conscience-wise to eating pork, get real with Paul. You're giving the wrong impression if you're trying to keep the Sabbath, for example, or observe the food laws, because those are the signs of the old covenant. You're telling people, I'm under the old covenant. You shouldn't be. So gain that freedom. That's another subject, I know entirely, but those are then two of the things. The third point I'll mention is that there was a law of taxation so that we don't offend them. Go to the lake rather and throw out a hook. Take the first fish that comes up. When you open its mouth, you'll find 4 drachma coin. Take that 4 drachma coin and give it to them for me and you. I think that's very, very interesting and very conclusive. So please learn the new covenant. Please do not be misled by the very false idea that Jesus had to keep the old covenant in the letter. He did not.
Also, the classic ones in the Sermon on the Mount.
Yes.
Matthew 5, he changed laws regarding capital punishment.
Yes.
Even anger or murder,
yes.
or killing, let's call it. The affirmation, adultery, divorce. There's
Mhm.
the law of oaths.
Yes.
That was in the Torah.
Very much.
The law of retaliation, loving
Yes.
your enemy. Pretty much the start of this new covenant law.
Yes.
That Paul goes on to call the law of Messiah.
Yes.
In at least 3 places throughout his letters, mainly in 1 Corinthians 9.
Do you want to turn to that one just for our audience sake? In 19, I, Paul, he was a Jew, formerly a very well-trained Jew. I'm free from all. I can make myself a slave to all. I am free, but I can do things to accommodate the sensitivities of other people so that I can gain even more people for the cause of Jesus and the kingdom gospel. To the Jews, I, Paul, became like a Jew in order to gain Jews. To those who are under the law, that's Jewish people, under the law of Moses, I became like someone under the law of Moses. though I myself, Paul, a Jew and a Christian, am not under the law of Moses. Is it clear? That's a strikingly interesting verse, and people really need to hear that.